Welcome back to the channel. Today we're reacting to a book titled Rich, a Dyamonde Daniel book written by Nikki Grimes. If this book piques your interest, there will be a link in the description box below. Also, make sure you visit my second YouTube channel named See My Power. It's the men's version to this YouTube channel. Help me get this video to 1,000 likes. As always, don't forget to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.
One Voice, a division of Full Cast Audio, presents Rich, a Dyamonde Daniel book, written and performed by Nikki Grimes.
One. Rich. Dyamonde and Free stood in front of a store window. "I hate being poor," said Free. "Ever since my dad lost his job, all my mom seems to say is, 'We can't afford this, we can't afford that.'" Dyamonde Daniel would not trade Free for anything. He was her best friend, wasn't he? But that boy had a lot to learn. "First off," said Dyamonde, "I've seen you buy lots of things, and second, you are not poor." "Then how come I can't buy that new video game?" "My mom says everybody wants something they can't have," said Dyamonde. "That doesn't make you poor." "Well, what do you call it then?" "Not having money right now," said Dyamonde. "Same thing," grumbled Free. "No, it isn't," said Dyamonde. "Poor is—" Dyamonde thought for a moment. "Poor is having no clothes and no food and no place to live and nobody who cares." "I guess," said Free, "but I still wish I could get that new video game." "Well then," said Dyamonde, "you'd better get to school so you can graduate, so you can get a job, so you can buy your own video game." "Forget it then," said Free. Dyamonde play-punched him in the arm. "You call that a punch? You punch like a girl," said Free. Dyamonde pulled her arm back and punched him for real this time. "Ouch! I was just kidding." "Come on then," said Dyamonde, "and hurry. Mrs. Cordell said she'd have a surprise for us today." 2. Surprise. "Attention, class," said Mrs. Cordell. "I have an announcement." "Great," thought Dyamonde. "Here it comes. First, how many of you like contests?" Everybody's hand went up except for Dyamonde's. She wanted to wait and see what this was all about first. "Well, the local library is sponsoring a poetry contest," said Mrs. Cordell. Tamika groaned. So did Charlie. But then Charlie groaned about everything. Mrs. Cordell ignored the groaning. "The top 3 poems will be published on the kids' page of the Sunday newspaper." "Ooh," said one kid. "I could be famous," said a second kid. "You wish," said a third. "And the winner," said Mrs. Cordell, "will receive a check for $100. "Oh, snap," said Free. Dyamonde did not even have to look at Free to know that his eyes were bugging out. She could just see him with imaginary dollar signs and little video games floating in front of him. "Now, who would like an entry form?" asked the teacher. Free's hand shot up higher than anyone else's. Dyamonde didn't raise hers. She decided to wait for math contests. That's what she was best at. But she was curious to know who was trying out for the contest. Dyamonde looked around the room and saw lots of hands. One of them belonged to a quiet girl named Damaris Dancer. Damaris was a pretty girl, really tall, with skin like dark chocolate mixed with strawberries. Her reddish-brown hair hung in heavy twists that made Dyamonde think of a lion's mane. Damaris raised her hand a little higher, just in case Mrs. Cordell hadn't noticed her. "That's strange," thought Dyamonde. "She never raises her hand for anything. I wonder—" "Psst," said Charlie from the seat next to Dyamonde. Dyamonde turned to him, annoyed. "Don't psst me," thought Dyamonde. She would have said as much out loud if Charlie hadn't distracted her by pressing a note in her hand. Dyamonde unfolded the torn loose-leaf page and read, I'm a poet, and I know it, and now I got the chance to show it. Free. Oh, please, thought Diamond, shaking her head. Then she wrote something on the bottom of the page and sent it back. Can't wait for lunch. Hope we have punch. Diamond. Free laughed, and Charlie asked, What's it say? Loud. Is there something you boys would like to share with the class? Asked Mrs. Cordell. No, said Free. Sorry. Diamond bowed her head to hide her smile. 3. Lunch punch. Diamond beat Free through the lunch line. She'd downed half a carton of milk by the time he joined her at the table. Doesn't look like punch to me, said Free. Hardy har har, said Diamond. Like your poem was so much better. You watch, said Free. I'm going to win that thing. Yeah, sure, said Diamond. Just then she noticed Damaris sitting 2 tables away. She wasn't eating, though. Instead, she was reading a book. She does that a lot, thought Diamond. In fact, I hardly ever see her eat. Is she on a special diet or something? Hello, said Free. Earth to die. Is anybody listening? Huh? Sorry, said Diamond. Do you know anything about her? About who? Asked Free. Damaris Dancer, said Diamond. Nope, said Free. Why? Just wondering, said Diamond. You know, she signed up for the contest. She might be good at writing poems. Her name kinda sounds like poetry. So what? Said Free. Nobody's going to win that contest except for me. There, you see. I know my poetry. Oh, please, said Diamond. Stop rhyming or you'll walk on out the door? And you won't come back no more? Quit it. Any more. I should have said. Rhyming's messing with my head. Enough already, thought Diamond. Reed Freeman, stop rhyming right now, or after school I'll go on a treasure hunt with somebody else. Treasure hunt? That got Free's attention. What treasure hunt? 4. Treasure hunt. Free loved digging up secrets. Once, he helped his dad dig up an ancient time capsule with records from the olden days that his dad had planted back when he was in high school. Then there was the scavenger hunt Free went on at summer camp. That was fun. He'd never heard of a girl digging up treasure, but if any girl could, it would be Diamond. After school that day, they met out front and headed across the avenue, walking toward Broadway. On Broadway, Diamond turned right. Where are we going? Asked Free. Almost there, said Diamond. Halfway down the block, Diamond stopped in front of an old store with a sign that read, Second Time Around. Free froze. He hated second-hand stores. I thought we were going to look for treasure, said Free. We are, said Diamond. In there. Come on. Before Free could argue, Diamond grabbed his hand and pulled him inside. He held on to the door like his life depended on it and looked up and down the street. He'd die if anybody he knew saw him entering that stinky old place. Second Time Around wasn't actually stinky, but Free had made up his mind that all second-hand stores were. Not that he was an expert. This was only the 3rd time he'd ever been in one. The other 2 times, his mom had dragged him into one to shop for clothes. Even the memory made Free say yuck. Once inside, Diamond let Free's hand go. What kind of treasure are we supposed to find in here? Asked Free. You're kidding, right? Said Diamond. Look around. I'm sorry, said Free, but I don't like these places. Why? 'Cause they're full of old clothes and stuff people threw away. Why would I want stuff other people threw away when I could buy something new? Diamond shook her head impatiently. First of all, new is okay, but new is boring. It hasn't been anywhere. And second, how do you know these things were thrown away? Maybe they are left over after a fire, or maybe a family all of a sudden disappeared and their perfectly good clothes and furniture and stuff were mysteriously left behind. Huh? When I look at the stuff here, I always wonder where it's been, what adventures it's been on. Like those boots. Did somebody wear them to climb a mountain? Or that jacket? Maybe the sleeves of it once blew in the breeze along some famous river, like the Nile. You never know, right? Free scratched his head. I guess, he said. It's not just old stuff, Free, said Diamond. Everything has a story. That's kind of what makes it a treasure. Free nodded, trying to see things Diamond's way, trying to understand. I'm going to take a look around, said Diamond. I'll meet you back up here in a few minutes. Okay, said Free. At first, Free just followed Diamond with his eyes, watching her slowly make her way down an aisle of old clothes, stopping now and then to feel the fabric, or to try on a sweater or a jacket in front of a mirror. Then he began wandering the aisles himself, choosing the one with old books and toys. The books didn't look half bad, and even the toys looked okay, though they were mostly for little kids, balls and dolls and whatnot. But there were table games, too, like Monopoly, only he already had a Monopoly set at home. Free sighed. I knew it, he thought. There were no treasures here. Of course, that's when he saw it. A glass jar filled with the most amazing marbles he'd ever seen. It was a small jar, but it must have had 20 marbles in it at least. Free reached for the jar, pulled it down gingerly, and searched for the price sticker. 50 cents! He couldn't believe his eyes. Free clutched the jar and went to find his friend. Look, said Free, coming up behind Diamond. She was studying a small wooden box she'd found on a shelf. Diamond turned around to see what Free was so excited about. Marbles, he said. Aren't they great? Only I can't figure out why anyone would throw good marbles away. Maybe they didn't, said Diamond. Maybe there's a story behind it. Yeah, said Free. There must be. Diamond smiled. She was trying real hard not to say, I told you so. How much? 50 cents. Can you believe it? Great, said Diamond. And here's my treasure for the day, a box for my rock collection. She held up the box, even opened it so he could smell inside. Smells good. What is it? Cedar. It's a special kind of wood. The box was worn in places, but it had a pretty gold latch. I'm going to paint it, said Diamond. Red, of course. Then it'll be perfect. Cool, said Free, who couldn't stop grinning. I wonder what other great stuff they've got in here. This place is amazing. But I thought you didn't like these places, said Diamond, throwing Free's own words back at him. Well, that was before, said Free. Anyways, why are we standing here talking? We're supposed to be hunting. Go on then, said Diamond. Nobody's stopping you. Free zoomed back to the toy aisle while Diamond turned her attention to clothes. Diamond had a funny way of shopping for clothes. She didn't pay attention to size or style at first. Instead, she picked her way through the rack looking for the color red. Once she found something in that color, only then would she consider the style. Size was the last thing on her mind. If the piece was too small, that was one thing. But if it was a little too big, Diamond figured all she had to do was put a belt on it, right? Row by row, Diamond made her way through the clothes section. Oh, well, sighed Diamond after an unsuccessful hunt. Maybe next time. Diamond went in search of Free. She found him in the book corner flipping through a copy of The Way Things Work. Hey, said Diamond. Hey is for horses, said Free. Diamond ignored that. Come on, we gotta go now. We'll never get our homework done tonight. Free looked up at the clock and realized they'd been in the store for almost an hour. He and Diamond took their goodies to the register and paid. Both treasures were small enough to stuff in their backpacks. See you next week, Diamond said to the cashier. Yeah, added Free. See you next week. As they left the store, Diamond thought she saw Damaris entering a building down the street. Damaris! Called Diamond. Where? Asked Free. There, said Diamond, pointing. But the girl had already disappeared without ever turning around. Diamond shrugged. Guess it wasn't her, said Diamond. Sure looked like her, though. Same lion's mane and everything, thought Diamond. Oh well. 5. Secrets. One Saturday, Mrs. Daniel joined Diamond on a treasure hunt. Only her mom didn't call it that. She called it shopping. Moms just have no imagination, thought Diamond. Anyway, when they left second time around, Diamond spotted Damaris Dancer exiting a white building down the street. This time, Diamond was sure it was the girl from her class. Damaris, called Diamond. At first the girl didn't turn around. Hey, Damaris, it's me, said Diamond. This time, Damaris looked around. When she saw Diamond, she ran in the opposite direction. That's weird, thought Diamond. Someone you know? Asked Mrs. Daniel. Kind of, said Diamond. She didn't say anything else, and her mom didn't ask more questions. As they passed the white building, though, Diamond noticed the sign above the entrance. It read, Shelter. Diamond knew what a shelter was. It was where people went to live when they didn't have any place else. She knew that the people who lived in shelters were poor, and now she knew that one of those people was Damaris. 6. Damaris. The following Monday, Diamond caught up with Damaris in the school hall. Hey, said Diamond, why'd you run away from me the other day? Huh? Saturday. Me and my mom were coming out a second time around, and I saw you coming out of the shelter. Damaris looked around, nervously twisting a strand of hair. No, I don't think so, she said. Yes, I know it was you. You even turned around when I called your name, but then you ran away. Damaris glanced up and down the hall to make sure no one else was close enough to hear. Look, she said in a whispery voice, nobody knows where I live, so please don't tell them, please. Don't worry, Diamond whispered back. It'll be our secret. Then she closed her mouth with an invisible zipper. After that, Damaris stopped looking so scared. Damaris avoided Diamond for the rest of that day, but on Tuesday, Diamond found her in the lunchroom with her usual pile of books and no food in sight. Diamond sat down next to her without asking. Free was out sick, so it's not like he would miss her. Want some chicken nuggets? Said Diamond. They're extra. Mom made me this cucumber and avocado sandwich, which I have to eat first. Damaris glanced at the chicken nuggets and licked her lips. I'm not hungry, she said, looking back at her book. You sure? Asked Diamond. I really need some help with these nuggets. Mom says it's a sin and a shame to throw food away. Well, said Damaris, maybe just one. Diamond pushed the plate of chicken toward her, smiling. Damaris went from being a reader to being a magician. She made those chicken nuggets disappear in no time flat. Damaris belched. Sorry. It's okay, said Diamond. She burped too, just so Damaris wouldn't feel bad. Once they were done with lunch, Diamond locked arms with Damaris and practically pulled her out to the schoolyard for recess. Diamond liked to know everything, and she'd made up her mind that she was going to get to know Damaris Dancer. 7. Poetry Contest. So, you signed up for the poetry contest, Diamond said to Damaris. Uh-huh. Didn't you? Diamond shook her head. I'm not very good at poetry. I love it. I write poems all the time, said Damaris. I'd do the contest even if there wasn't any money to win. Really? From the way the girl's face lit up, Diamond believed her. I've got a bunch of poems already. Want to see? Said Damaris. She pulled out her notebook before Diamond could even answer. The book was filled with page after page of poems. There were hardly any blank pages left. Wow, said Diamond. As Diamond read her poems, Damaris did something funny with her face. The corners of her mouth turned up, and the top row of her teeth appeared. Damaris was smiling. Diamond had never seen her do that before. "What are you going to write about for the contest?" asked Diamond. Damaris shrugged. "I have absolutely no idea." "Huh?" "Absolutely, positively," said Damaris. "I just switched the words around a little. I like to play with words. That's what poetry is anyway. Playing with words." "If you say so," said Diamond, scratching her head. "Anyway," said Damaris, "the contest only gives you 3 topics to choose from, so I'll have to pick one." "What are they?" Damaris counted them off on her fingers. "Nature, make-believe, and home." She whispered the last word, like it was extra special. "You should write about home," said Diamond. "How can I? It's not like my family has one, remember?" "Yeah, but you could write about where you live now." "What? Write about living in a shelter so people could laugh at me? No, thank you." "No," said Diamond. "Look. Where you live is different from where everybody else lives, so your poem would be different too. And everybody knows it's good to be different in a contest." Diamond was absolutely sure she was right. Wasn't she always? Damaris shut her poetry notebook and put it away. Her smile was gone now. "You promised you wouldn't tell anybody where I live," whispered Damaris. "I didn't," said Diamond. "You promised," said Damaris. "Now you want me to write about it so everybody will know? Forget it." Damaris stomped off. Diamond ran after her. "What did I do?" asked Diamond. "Quit following me," Damaris snapped. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for making you so mad." "Fine," said Damaris, but she still looked pretty mad to Diamond. Diamond jumped in front of Damaris to keep her from running away. "My mom says people laugh at other people because they don't know better," said Diamond. "Maybe if they knew what it was like to live in a shelter, they wouldn't laugh." "You could be the one to tell them," said Diamond, "in a poem." Damaris listened. Her angry face melted away. "I don't know," said Damaris. "Maybe." Both girls were quiet for a moment. They sat down on a bench and turned their faces up to the sun, closing their eyes. "How come you live in a shelter anyway?" asked Diamond. With her eyes still closed, Damaris sighed. "My mom was working 2 jobs and she lost one of them. She got late on the rent, so they threw our stuff on the sidewalk and said we had to go. Mom found another job, but it was too late. Now, me and my 2 brothers and my mom have to stay in a shelter till we can save up enough to get a new apartment." "Man," said Diamond. "Yeah," said Damaris. "So what happened to all your stuff?" asked Diamond. Damaris shrugged. "Most of it ended up in some second-hand store somewhere." Diamond thought of Second Time Around. She thought of all the stories she used to make up in her mind about the clothes, toys, and furniture she found there. But this wasn't a made-up story. This was real. The bell rang, and both girls walked back to class in silence. At the door of their classroom, Diamond turned to Damaris. "I still think you should write about it," she said. "You told me the whole story, and guess what? I didn't laugh. Not once." "Laugh about what?" asked Charlie, butting in like always. Diamond put her hands on her hips. "Our conversation has absolutely, positively nothing to do with you, Charlie." "Huh?" Damaris did that funny thing with her face again. She smiled. 8. The Three Musketeers. When Free came back to school the next day, he found himself part of a trio. He didn't get to vote on it, but that was okay. He liked Damaris. She seemed to be smart like Dyamonde. Plus, she was almost as tall as he was. Dyamonde didn't mind being the short one. She made up for it by having the biggest mouth. When it came to talking, nobody could beat her. The three friends sat together at lunch, did homework together, picked each other for games, and made trips to the library together. They visited each other at home, too, except they never went to the shelter with Damaris. There wasn't any space for visitors there. Plus, Damaris never invited them. Free didn't know anything about Damaris living in the shelter, so he wondered why she never invited them home. Which is why, one day at the library, he leaned across the table and asked, "Damaris, how come you never invite us to your house? You ashamed of us or something?" Damaris jumped back, stinging from Free's question. It was too close to the truth. She was ashamed of something. Where she lived. Dyamonde was mad at Free for bringing it up. She kicked him under the table. Hard. "Ouch," said Free. "What do you do that for?" "I was just joking." "Shh," said Dyamonde in a loud whisper. "We're in the library, and we have to be quiet. Don't you know anything?" Free was confused. They talked in the library lots of times. He was about to say that, but Dyamonde gave him her "don't you even think about it" look, so he kept his mouth shut. When Free was done with his book report, he headed home and left the girls to themselves, which was perfect. Dyamonde had a private invitation just for Damaris. "Hey, you want to spend the night at my house on Friday? On Saturday mornings, my mom makes the yummiest pancakes on the planet." "Phantasmic," said Damaris. "I'll ask my mom." 9. Sleepover. Dyamonde woke up happy the next Saturday. She hadn't had a friend spend the night since she left Brooklyn. Damaris seemed to have a good time, too, at first. She liked helping Dyamonde set the table. She laughed when Dyamonde made gagging sounds the minute Mrs. Daniel spooned Brussels sprouts on their plates. She liked playing Monopoly. She really liked joining Dyamonde against Mrs. Daniel in a game of gin rummy, especially when they won and got extra ice cream for dessert. But the next morning, Damaris seemed sad. Dyamonde noticed it over breakfast. "Are your pancakes okay?" asked Dyamonde. Damaris nodded yes. "Well, what's wrong, then?" asked Dyamonde. Damaris shrugged. She poured more syrup on her pancakes and diced them into tiny pieces before finally putting one in her mouth. Dyamonde always did that when she wanted to make food last longer. "Is that what she's doing?" wondered Dyamonde. "My mom can make lots more pancakes if you want," said Dyamonde. Damaris nodded and kept chewing slower than slow. "Aren't these pancakes the best?" asked Dyamonde. "Honey," said Mrs. Daniel, "leave the child alone and let her eat in peace." Dyamonde sighed and went back to working on her own stack of blueberry pancake heaven. She was licking her fingers when Damaris said, I wish I could stay here. I wish I didn't have to go back to that shelter." That's why she's sad, thought Dyamonde. A tear slid down the girl's cheek. Dyamonde ran over to her friend and hugged her so tight Damaris felt like the middle of a love sandwich. "Come here, honey," said Mrs. Daniel, prying Damaris loose. "Let's get that face of yours cleaned up." While Mrs. Daniel led Damaris to the bathroom, Dyamonde cleared the table and washed the breakfast dishes. In a few minutes, Damaris was at the door, face scrubbed, ready to say goodbye. "Wait up," said Dyamonde. "I'll walk you." 10. Honey, I Love. Diamond left Damaris at the entrance to the shelter and said a quick goodbye. She was feeling as sad as her friend now. What made her especially sad was that she couldn't give her friend a new place to live. She couldn't give her back all her clothes and toys. Even so, Diamond kept thinking, there must be something I can do. Diamond walked past second time around and spotted something in the store's window. That's it, said Diamond. She doubled back to the entrance, ducked inside, and headed straight for the book aisle. Diamond started looking. Biographies, fairy tales, science fiction. There, said Diamond. Poetry. Diamond flipped through several titles until she found one she liked. Perfect, said Diamond. Hello there, said the cash register lady. Haven't seen you in a while. What have you got there? Poetry, said Diamond. Well, that's a first. I don't think I've ever seen you buy a book here before. It's for my friend, said Diamond. Oh, well, I hope she likes it. Me too, said Diamond. Me too. The following Monday, Diamond got to school early. She wrote a note, slipped it inside the poetry book, and left both on the chair where Damaris sat. That way, she'd be sure to see the book first thing. As the class filled up, Diamond kept her eye on the book to make sure no one else took it by mistake. Once Damaris got to her seat and found the book, Diamond relaxed. But only a little. She was still nervous about the choice, seeing as how poetry was not her thing, and she didn't know if Damaris would think the book was any good. What if she doesn't like it? Thought Diamond. What if I pick the wrong one? She should like the title, though. The book was called Honey, I Love by Eloise Greenfield. Diamond remembered Mrs. Cordell saying this author was really special. Diamond crossed her fingers and watched Damaris scan a few pages of the book. Diamond held her breath until Damaris looked her way. She was smiling. Then she read Diamond's note and smiled even more. Good luck with your poem writing. I hope this helps. Diamond. After class, Damaris rushed up to Diamond. How did you know? She asked, her eyes gleaming. How did I know what? Asked Diamond. That Eloise Greenfield is my favorite poet. Diamond felt all tingly. She is? Damaris nodded so hard, Diamond thought her head would fall off. Wow, said Diamond, speechless for once. Before we lost our house, I had copies of every single book she ever wrote, said Damaris. But now... Diamond noticed a sudden sadness pulling down the corners of her friend's mouth. I know what, said Diamond, thinking quickly. One Saturday you can join me and Free when we go treasure hunting. Maybe we can find another Eloise Greenfield book for not too much money in the same place where I found this one. Damaris managed to smile again. Yeah? Why not? Said Diamond. But right now, we better get some lunch, 'cause I'm about to chew off my own arm, I'm so hungry. Damaris slipped her new old copy of Honey, I Love into her backpack and followed the amazing Dyamonde Daniel out of the room. 11. And the winner is... Diamond opened the newspaper to the kids' page. Oh, geez, thought Diamond. I'll never hear the end of it. Free's poem made it to the Sunday paper. He chose to write about nature, sort of. His poem was titled, Give a Pigeon a Break. Diamond read the title and laughed out loud. Then she noticed the poem at the top of the page, written by Damaris. It had won first prize. And why wouldn't it? After all, Damaris had taken Diamond's wonderful advice to write about home. Diamond could barely stop patting herself on the back long enough to cut out the poem and tape it to the fridge. She was thrilled for Damaris. Rich by Damaris Dancer. Home is a word I forgot how to spell. I live in a shelter, but I never tell. The place is all right, but it makes me sad. I remember our old house, the great toys we had, the bed where I slept all by myself, the rows of books that crowded our shelf. But Mom lost her job, and we had to move. Now I always feel I have something to prove. While I may seem poor, with no home of my own, but I'm rich in good friends, so I'm never alone. Diamond hadn't even entered the contest, but in a way, she felt like a winner. She'd learned to like poetry thanks to Damaris, which is what she told her the next day at lunch when she could get a word in edgewise. "I'm a published poet now," said Free. "Yes, we know," said Diamond. "It's like I told you. I'm a poet, and I know it." "And now so do the rest of us," said Diamond. "Absolutely, positively," said Damaris. Free shook his head. He always tuned out whenever Damaris started speaking in made-up words. "Look," said Free, "I'm just saying I got skills." Diamond sighed. "I knew I was never going to hear the end of this," she thought. "You're right, Free. You've got skills. But Damaris has even more skills, which is why she won the contest." "Your poem was the best," said Diamond, trying to turn the attention to Damaris. Free shrugged. "Your poem was righteous, I give you that," said Free. "Well, I don't know about righteous," said Damaris, "but it's the truth, and my mom told me you should never be ashamed of the truth." "Word," said Free, silent for half a second. Then he tapped his poem in the Sunday newspaper, saying, "But look at this baby. It's beautiful. Come on, be honest. Y'all both know that Fabulous Free should have been the winner." Free struck a pose like he was waiting for some reporter to run up and snap his picture. "Oh, please," said Diamond. She and Damaris burst out laughing. Before Free knew it, he was laughing too.
We hope you've enjoyed our unabridged production of Rich, a Dyamonde Daniel book, which was written.
Well, tell me your thoughts about this book in the comments. Have you ever had to keep a secret for a friend? Or has a friend ever had to keep a secret of yours? Was it a big secret or a small secret? Let me know in the comments. And as always, make sure you like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.